This is the day on which we usually talk to Craig Stobo, one of New Zealand's leading business and independent commentators, and also with a very strong political hat. We all know his background, and he joins us this afternoon. Craig, how are you?
Hello, sorry I'm a bit late. How are you?
That's all right. What have you been up to? You've been playing golf or something, have you?
No. I just finished a board meeting and parked at the back of Koei, and there was this woman driving an SUV with a guy on the bonnet hanging onto the windscreen wipers, driving off at speed away from the beach. So I've just been on the phone to 111 to try and ensure that they track the car down and no one gets hurt. So I'm sorry I'm a bit late.
You have such an exciting life. You climb mountains, you're at the heart of a whole series of international terrorism incidents, and now this. Craig, trouble just follows you.
Well, I was a little bit suspicious when they were walking past arguing, and then they took off from their residence address, and who knows, hopefully they, hoping nothing happens anyway.
Well, actually, good on you for being so public-spirited about it. No, seriously, though, because a lot of other people just look the other way, as we know.
Anyway.
Talking about looking the other way, yesterday a whole lot of people looked the other way when the emissions trading scheme auction came up.
Yeah, another failed auction. So this is the third in a row. There are about 4.5 million units available at the auction, with quite a few held over from previous auctions. The last secondary market price was about $71 a unit. There were 452 bids from 17 different bidders, but obviously the price wasn't high enough despite a rising minimum auction floor, so it failed. Which means there's no extra units, and it gets rolled over now to the December auction when the cost containment reserve, which is where extra units are made available, rises from $80.64 to $173. So we have another 3 months to go in the secondary market. Clearly no one was interested in buying units at a high enough price, which means there are no more dollars going into the Climate Emergency Response Fund. And out of that fund, things like the GIDI, the GIDI Fund, which tries to help industry convert from GHG energy to renewables. It's another failed auction, which is extraordinary. So there'll be some disappointment from bidders. There'll be some disappointment from politicians with the Climate Emergency Response Fund not being funded again. And I thought I'd just have a quick run through what does this mean, because you keep asking what does this mean. The modelling that's been done by the government suggests that for every $10 increase in the ETS unit, it costs the average household about $1.67 per week in terms of higher costs. So it's obviously a lower number per week for those on smaller, more constrained budgets, but $1.67. So if you multiply that out through the course of a year, it's $86.80 or so per annum for every $10. So you can see how if the ETS price does rise, what it does mean for household budgets. And I think you've had a discussion with some of the gentlemen in the oil industry, petrol industry, around, the percentage or the dollar amount in a petrol price that comes from the ETS cost. So, failed auction.
Well, can I just ask you on that one, Craig? That's a government figure you've quoted, so I'm not holding you accountable for it, $1.67 per week. Talking to the chief executive of Waitomo, and his views on that were, we're going to see an extra at least, between 15 and 25 cents a litre price. That's a damn sight more than $1.67.
Yeah, well, this is the average per week. This is modelling done by the government, so I can't tie...
Oh, is that per capita? So they're counting all five of the people who live in my family?
That's $1.67 per... Yeah, that's right. That's average household. So
average household.
Yeah. What's a household? Three people, 4 people. So, yeah.
God,
it's a bit hard to tie those two numbers together.
Yeah, I can't, because it's difficult to, I suggest the impact's going to be much greater than that. Anyhow, it failed again. You sort of predicted it would. There's another one, I think, in December, is that right? Or November or December?
Correct. No, that's correct. And by that time, the minimum auction floor price rises to $60. So the market's slowly being guided upwards, isn't it, in terms of ETS pricing?
Except the market's not going there, though.
We don't know where the clearing price was. Is it closer to $80 or was it closer to 72? I don't know. They don't disclose what they were hoping for, but anyway, it didn't clear.
Mate, you're much smarter than me. Also, there's a consequence of this and this fund failing as well, not just for the government, but also for the National Party, because isn't some of their tax policy predicated on the basis of applying those funds elsewhere?
Yes. So they called it a dividend, which is not quite right, but the money was going to come from the Climate Emergency Response Fund, and that hasn't had a top-up now for 3 auctions, so it's not going anywhere. So it is a constraint, you're right.
All right, if it fails again, and it may well do, what happens? Does it fall over completely?
I don't think it will fall over completely. There'll be another review of settings, etc. And we don't know whether or not market participants are quite happy to stay in the secondary market rather than buying new units, because they think they're going to get more units made available by the foresters, for example. Don't forget that our scheme's a bit unusual in that the forestry sector can, sell units into the scheme. So, people make their own assessments as buyers and sellers around the likely price path, and they'll have awareness of, what the foresters are doing. So there may be some of that. I'm just not sure.
All right. What else did you find interesting this week? Because there's a lot going down at the moment, policy being released every day.
I had a sort of think about the Labor Party policy on dental care and sort of thought about it from if you were doing policy 101, what would you think of that policy release? And you'd sort of say to yourself, what's the problem they're trying to solve? And they said 1.5 million New Zealanders didn't visit a dentist because it was too expensive, but that's a bit like saying, 5 million New Zealanders didn't travel overseas because it was too expensive. So it doesn't quite gel as a reason for the policy. What struck me, though, was that they were pretty clear that they thought that people are entitled to the best healthcare no matter who they are or where they live, which is extraordinary, which sort of goes to universal dental care ambitions, which Grant Robertson was concerned about last year when he was quoted as saying that would require over $1 billion New Zealand dollars to roll out that policy. And you have to think to yourself, well, is that the best use of taxpayers' money? Is there other priorities that people have, and why should the government or the Crown, if you excuse the pun, why would the Crown decide that dental care was the best outcome for New Zealand households? And the third kind of rationale was it was part of their cost of living plan to try and reduce cost, which is basically inflation, but that's not just occurring in dental care, it's occurring everywhere else. And so I thought to myself, well, how many people are going to take advantage of this? And the Labor Party thought there'd be 800,000 people between 18 and 30 years old who would benefit from this. But there's already 1.1 million New Zealanders taking advantage of it between 0 and 18. And you sort of ask yourself, well, how well is that policy going now? How many people are actually taking advantage of that policy? So we don't know. We don't know how successful the existing policy is, what the holes in that, excuse the pun again. So if the cost of this new idea is $390 million over 4 years, which is $100 million per annum, and it goes into a sector that's constrained by staff numbers, that's about $125 each if you do one visit. 800,000 people do one visit, which is obviously not going to happen. And you can't get a supply response by having more dentists on the spot from day one. Doesn't it just go to price increases at dentists? The dentists will just put their prices up.
Yeah, of course they will.
So it just gets, the whole subsidy kind of gets eroded away. And then I thought, well, how many dentists are there in New Zealand? And the Dental Council website's quite helpful. There are 2,465 dentists. Only 137 of those are in DHBs. We get an extra 60 dentists every year from Otago, and some dentists that arrive here from overseas, and some dentists retire. But that's not enough to cover, an extra $800,000 or obviously $800,000 or so extra patients who are coming in with a free subsidy. So it sort of fails on an execution basis. And then you've got access issues. Like there are no dentists, according to the Medical Council, in the Kaipara, Westland, Huranui, Mackenzie, Waimate, Chatham Islands, and there are lots of people around New Zealand that can't travel to dentists very easily. So is this the best way of delivering dental care? What about prevention?